investment in farmland in Australia over the last 12 months. Meanwhile, demand from family interests has eased. Each year, the Weekly Times conducts a thorough investigation into exactly who owns Australian farmland, and I'm joined by their editor, James Wagstaff. James, huge amount of work.
Lyndsey, absolutely nightmare. I think I need to get a few hobbies going on, but it has occupied my life for a couple of months. This is something we started 8 years ago when S. Kidman and Co was for sale, and there was a huge controversy over it being sold to Chinese interests. So we kind of took a bit of a step back and had a look at who owns Australia's farms. Like, there was a lot of concern about the Chinese interest coming into Australia, but we kind of found out, scratched the surface, and we found out a lot of information about how much of Australia was actually owned by foreign corporations that kind of had flown in under the radar, and indeed they have.
Well, apparently your investigation found that the top 10 alone expanded over the last 12 months to another $24 billion in their portfolio.
Yeah, so
Insane.
$24 billion in total. It's a huge thing, and since we've been doing it, like, you know, the likes of PSP investments in Canada have come in very hot, through a number of acquisitions, but, in the cattle, in the beef side of things here, but in the horty space as well, the dairy, it's just amazing. And they've grown from, I think, when I first started reporting on PSP, they had something like $2.5 billion, $3 billion, and now they're up to 7.5.
They're largely a super fund, right, for the likes of the Mounties?
Yeah, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is a fantastic headline at the Weekly Times, but also, the Canadian Public Service in effect. So, a lot of those pension funds are really coming in quite strong.
So in terms of those institutional investors, we've got Canadians at PSP up top. Who's next?
Number 2 is Macquarie Ag. So it's an Australian-based fund, but the likes of Paraway, which obviously a lot of people here at Beef Week know, but Paraway Pastoral Company, they've got Cubby Station. It's a Australian-based fund, does include some overseas capital, obviously. I think the top 10 all are either overseas owned or include some overseas capital, so that always causes a bit of friction in some circles. But Macquarie Ag coming in number 2, so they're a huge player.
Who's third and fourth?
Third and fourth. So the US number 3 is the US-based, New York-based TIAA-CREF. So they're basically under the banner here as Nuveen Natural Capital, and they've got about $2.5 billion worth of assets as well. So look, and that's grown, from, I think, even the end of last year we were reporting on TIAA-CREF having 2.1, and it's grown to 2.5 in the matter of 8 or 9 months. So it's a huge amount of cash being thrown into Australian ag.
Hong Kong interest sitting in at fourth.
Hong Kong number 4, so that's backed by one of Hong Kong's richest families. So that's CK Life Science. They've got a huge portfolio, mostly horticultural assets. They've gone big in the irrigated farming in the south, in particular in Victoria, southern New South Wales, but a lot of wine grapes as well. So it's very interesting.
It's a huge testament, isn't it, to the belief in the future of Australian agriculture?
Yeah, 100%. And I was talking to Nutrien boss Kelly Freeman yesterday. I'm just like, obviously they're Canadian-based as well. So, you've got the Canadians investing not just in the farming space, but also the supply chain space. Like down in Victoria, obviously, there's a lot of focus on dairy. We've got Saputo, which is one of the biggest dairy operations in Victoria, or in Australia, and they're Canadian-owned as well. And he just said, look, obviously, there's a rush to invest in agriculture broadly. Australia offers that scale. You can invest in it, probably compared to Europe and Americas, there's probably a bit easier to invest over here. We're operate under a similar parliamentary kind of rule of law in Canada. We're a part of the Commonwealth, so they kind of see us as a safe place to park their cash.
James, we've talked about dollar value in terms of the big hitters. Let's talk about acres, hectares.
Yep.
Who's the number one landholder in Australia at the moment?
I think they're mostly out here.
Yeah. They're hanging around next
exactly.
door.
They're at the bar. No, so obviously for the past 3 years, Crown Point Pastoral Company, which is owned by Donny Costello and Viv Oldfield, 2 mates from Central Australia, they've been number 1.
And isn't their land size bigger than Switzerland times 2 or something?
Exactly. It's 9 million hectares, which is huge. So Gina Reinhardt for a long time was Australia's biggest landholder, but for the past 3 years, obviously, Crown Point's kind of edged ahead. We've got AACO, number 2, 6.6 million hectares, obviously 200 years this year, so it's a great year for them. Then obviously, the likes of NAPCO
and some big family names up in
CCP.
Queensland, the McDonald's family, the Hughes family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge in the Wagyu game, the Hughes family.
Yeah, 100%.
Brook Pastoral.
Yep.
Channel Country.
Channel Country.
Publicans.
I know. Oh, yes. You still own? Does he still own the?
No, but used to.
Pub?
Yeah,
exactly.
previous publicans.
Yeah.
It's so interesting looking at the whole world of it. I just think it's a monumental amount of research, and we're all the beneficiaries of it. So to your team at the Weekly Times, who do all the work with you, congratulations to you, James. You're up here also to have a good time, get some good stories. How do you spend your week at Beef?
I'm about done. I think no, I'm
Are you
ready to go to the bar. No, I've been here since Sunday, which is fantastic. We flew up Sunday morning. We've spent myself and another journo are here, and we've just spent the day, a couple of days on the ground doing videos and catching up, just getting the grassroots.
Any hot stories you can leak to us?
I'm not
Not on Beef
anything.
TV. Are we competitors now?
Yeah, I think we are.
Is this a problem?
Yeah, it is.
Hey,
It's
can I
awful.
say, I know you're a print journo, but you look very good on camera. You're doing a good job.
Great.
You're sharp.
Thanks, Lyndsey.
James Wagstaff there from the Weekly Times. And if you haven't read that report yet into who